Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Sankary. I'm with Esri in the industry solutions area where I look after retail and real estate. I am delighted to be joined today by Eric Pollard. Eric leads our professional services area for these same industries, and he has a tremendous amount of experience in the real estate market. And today we're going to be talking about mapping to millions. So how real estate riches with GIS parcel intelligence, and finding accurate and parcel data quickly is often is critical in a lot of deal making, and especially when looking for properties and trying to evaluate where to go with expansion. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. One thing, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use so using the Q&A the Q&A function here in Zoom. We'll be answering as many as we can at the end of the session. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties at all, please use the chat feature to ask for help. We are being monitored. I'll be monitoring it as well as our friends from CCIM. The recording and any accompanying presentation that we have is going to be emailed to all registered attendees after the event. So with that, Eric, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to turn the show over to you.
All right, thanks, Gary, and hello, everybody. Good to be here with you today. As Gary said, we're going to be talking about how to leverage parcel data and ArcGIS to map your way to millions. Let's get right into it. So there's a few key areas that we're going to discuss today. First being, how do we get parcel data? Where do we find that data? What types of formats does it come in? And how is that useful to us? And so we'll talk about some downloadable data, we'll talk about some online services, and we'll even talk about some third-party, or what we call Esri partner data as well. Then we're going to talk about mapping those parcels, right? So how do we get that data into the GIS so that we can use it in your site to do business applications? Now, within that site to do business application, we're also going to have the ability to symbolize and customize the look and feel of those parcels. So we'll talk about that as well. And then finally, as many of you are familiar, the application called Business Analyst is part of your site to do business package. And we'll want to bring these parcels into that business analyst environment to do further analysis. Speaking of analysis, we'll show you how to take those parcels and create sites, which you may be familiar with. We'll also show you how to geo-enrich them with demographics for proximities such as drive times and radii around those parcels. And then we'll also show you how to relate it with other layers that are available in ArcGIS. So let's jump right into it. So parcel data sources. This is one of the most common questions we get at Esri. How do we find parcel data? How do we get that into our GIS? And then how do we use that? And so some of the parcel data sources you'll see here are the ones that we recommend and use with our clients. One of them is parcel data downloads directly. So you'll see on the left-hand side, I've happened to pull up the Connecticut parcel page from the Office of Policy and Management, and they have a direct download button that you can see right there where you can actually download a zip file of their parcel data. So that's a great way to get started with getting parcels. Find that flat file on your county, either the county website for their data, or in many cases, the county appraiser's website. We'll show you also how to search ArcGIS online in a minute for some of the parcel layers that have been already published out to the ArcGIS online environment. Those are actually made available freely for public use in most cases. And then finally, there are third-party websites that are GIS data repositories. Sometimes those are commercial, sometimes those are kept by the states or more federal agencies, but you will occasionally find those. There is no one single source that I'm aware of or Esri is aware of that is complete for all parcels nationwide. It will be based on region, based on state, based on area of focus, etc. Now, I don't expect you to know all these file extensions down here, but these are some of the ones that you'll be looking for if you go to find a parcel data download. Very commonly, you'll see something called a shape file. Also, just as commonly, you'll see something called a geodatabase. And then in some cases, you'll also see something called a KML or KMZ, which happens to be another file format that is spatially enabled. And in many cases, one or all of these may be zipped up into a zip file that you'll have to unzip and then use that file. Now, another way that you can find parcel data is online mapping services. And so what do I mean by services? Well, services are data that somebody else, let's say a state or a county, has already published to their online GIS system, out to ArcGIS Online, and they've made that service available for you to use. So why is this beneficial? Well, you don't have to go and download the file and upload it. You go directly to that link to their service and use it in your maps. So I'm going to show you this one in a moment specifically, the NC1 map. North Carolina happens to be one of a handful of states that does a really good job in providing the mapping services out for use, meaning you don't have to do that download process. You can, again, just directly use it. You may find that there are statewide entities that do this. Connecticut is actually a good example. They do it. North Carolina does it. And again, there are some region-wide ones as well. I know there's some Southeast US ones, and I believe some West Coast ones as well. So another great way to get data in, you'll see some of these terms being used: web mapping service, web feature service, and then you'll also see OGC, which is basically just a compliance. It's Open Geospatial Consortium compliance. It basically means that this is a file that you can use with ArcGIS. And in all of these cases, what you're really getting is you're just getting a web address or a URL. And I'm going to show you how you'll use that in a minute. And then finally, one other type of data source that we can use for parcels is third-party commercial data providers. And so you'll see a picture here I have of one that we work with frequently, Regrid. They are an aggregator and provider of that parcel data. And so why is this so important? Well, those of you that understand or know about parcel data know that in almost all cases, the parcel data is originally procured from the county. And so we have over 3,000 counties in the United States. That's a lot of different counties with a lot of different files. And they also have their files with different schema. And schema basically is the headers, right? Different titles and headers and things. So in almost all cases, there's no single common schema across all of the different parcel sets. But companies like Regrid will take the time to go through and put them in a common schema so that all those files of parcels fit essentially in one single table, and we can use it in our GIS to filter, to query, to look at information evenly across the country. Now, there are other providers as well. First American Data Tree is one that we've listed and have worked with frequently. CoreLogic is another one. These are not the only three. There are many, many others out there. Some people have heard of Lightbox. There are many others as well. And so you'll want to do a little bit of homework if you're looking to purchase the data for what you're looking for. Some of the things I suggest are looking at completeness. So what percentage of the country do they have mapped? You may also be looking in different countries, and there are providers like RexTag that has data in other countries. You may also be looking at the detail of data. So some of these have more detailed ownership data. First American Data Tree does jump out as a partner that has very detailed title and ownership information going back many different owners on those parcels. And again, they're all going to have their pluses and minuses and their benefits. So definitely recommend looking at those in detail if you want to go to that parcel provider third-party route. Now, why don't we show you a little bit before we map them about how we can get access to some of that data. So I'm just going to bring up my normal web browser and show you here some of the things that I was looking at a moment ago. So this is the Connecticut data portal or geodata portal. By going to this data.ct.gov, I can get access to a large number of different data sources. Now, I've already gone ahead and done the search for parcels and landed on their parcel page. You'll see here it gives me a little bit of a description about what these parcels are, how many towns and townships and counties are part of this, what the vintage is, et cetera, et cetera. Also, you can go down here and see other information like how many people have viewed this, what's the update frequency, et cetera. But most importantly here, you'll see a download button. And so that download button, if I click it, will allow me to just download, as it just did to my browser, that file. And that file is going to be zipped up. Again, just like I told you before, you'll just need to unzip that, and then you'll actually load that in, which I'll show you in a minute, into your ArcGIS software. So that is one example of searching the open web and finding a county website or a state website and getting data. Again, partners, one more thing I should mention, Esri has a great partner network website. So if you want to shortcut your searching for things like parcels, you can go to the Esri Partner Network. Just type into Google Esri Partner Network, and you will see all of our partners, which you can then search by a key term like parcels. So for example, Regrid pops up here by searching for the term parcel in our partner network. And you can see that you can read more about their specific nationwide parcel data. You have contact information, website information, etc. Now let's go one further and go into ArcGIS Online. So many of you access ArcGIS Online by going to Site to Do Business, and you'll see there's two different Esri ArcGIS tabs. One is the Business Analyst button, and the other button is going to be something, again, called ArcGIS Online. When you click in there, yours will look slightly different than mine. Mine is styled for the consulting that I do within Esri, but it essentially has this type of layout where you have these headers up here and you have some key functions in the top right. All of you from the home page will have a search button. If I click on this search button, it allows me to search all of the ArcGIS Online ecosystem. So if I search for the word parcels and hit OK, by definition, it's first going to search just in the organization that I'm a part of. So in your case, you're part of the CCIM Site to Do Business organization. If you click this button to turn off searching only in your organization, you'll see that a large number of parcel results appear, in this case, over 10,000, based on searching the entire ArcGIS Online ecosystem. And what I mean by ecosystem, this is every user, every entity, every organization in the world that uses ArcGIS Online. The ones that are showing up are ones that have specifically been tagged for public use. So this is typically government entities or other types of publicly available data. Now, I may want to get a little more specific. I've been giving the example of North Carolina for a while, so I'm going to type in North Carolina parcels. And you're going to see that a series of different parcels and their associated data sets all appear here. So you see the first one I have here is this North Carolina parcels polygons. It gives me a little thumbnail. I also can see that it's coming from something called NC1 map, the state of North Carolina. We've also checked it as authoritative. So this is definitely an authoritative data source that Esri recognizes as the kind of truth for this type of data. So take a look at these. You may need different sets of data in here. You may want things like county polygon lines. You may want centroids, etc. For today, we're going to go ahead and go into what is the actual polygon boundaries for the parcels. So by clicking on here, it'll actually bring you into, it'll bring you into the page right here that you can go ahead and actually see on NC1 a little preview. So what's nice is in this NC1 map, you're going to see that same little thumbnail. You're going to see a preview of what this data is. Again, just like the Connecticut portal, but in this case, we have a few extra options. Again, we can download the data if we want, but we also have the option to view the data source. So if I click on View Data Source, I know this gets technical. We don't need to understand what this is. All we need to know is that there is a web address up here that we can use in ArcGIS Online. So this web address up here is what you would be looking for. In some cases, on some states and counties, they're going to put that web address right on their website. In some cases, you have to do things like clicking View Data Source. That web address is the linked data. In your content for ArcGIS, and the way to get to there, again, is going to be the Content tab in My Content. I can always add a new item into my content, right? I can choose a folder, or I can just put it in my home folder. And you'll notice by clicking on here, I have the option to upload either a file or one of these other types of pieces of content. So that type of content that I just showed you would be considered a URL, right? A web link. I would click on URL. In that URL, I would just paste that copied layer. Let me make sure I copied it. I'll go in here and paste it. And you'll see it automatically recognizes it as an ArcGIS server web service. So all I have to do is hit next. I can give it a title. So I'll call it NC Parcels, and we'll call this webinar. And we'll go ahead and hit save. And what's great is that's all I had to do. I now have a link to the North Carolina complete set of parcels that I can use. It inherits all the description and information from the North Carolina publisher, and I can open it up in my map and start to work with that data. Now, one thing to be aware of is that this is not the actual data from North Carolina copied into your organization. What it is a reference to their data. So as they update the data, those updates will be reflected in any maps and in any applications that you create off of this data. So very important to understand. Alternatively, if you were to download the data and upload it, that is then a static copy. That means that that data will be exactly in that format until you update it at a later point in time. So hopefully that gives a little bit of an overview of getting some of the data and how we can actually access it. Let's go ahead and go into mapping. So again, we've talked a little bit about how we can load that file, right? Again, the URL button is key. Also understand that you can upload any file on your machine that you may have. So you may have been given by a colleague or by somebody else you're working with a series of parcels that maybe is a subset. Again, you can load those up in here as long as they are one of those types of files we talked about earlier. And what's great is all this is available through your CCIM subscription, right? The ArcGIS Online button, also all the contents that are available out in the ArcGIS Online ecosystem that I searched. You have access to all that data and much, much more, as you know. Now, one other thing that we're going to do in a moment is once we bring these parcel data sets in, we're going to want to customize them. We're going to want to change the symbolization a little. We may even want to change the scale a little bit as well. So we're going to bring in that North Carolina parcel set, and we're going to do this. We're going to change this a little bit and change the scale. And then you can always save it as your own custom reference to that layer, or save it as your own layer file from a downloaded file originally. So this will make using your parcels much, much easier. Let's go ahead and go back over to our application. So again, we loaded up a reference to this North Carolina parcels. I can go ahead and choose to open it in my Web Map Viewer Classic, or I can choose to open it in the New Map Viewer. I'm going to use the New Map Viewer for today. Okay, so we'll give it a moment. We'll see the map loads. Now you'll notice something right away. Don't be alarmed. No parcels are going to show up when you're zoomed out to the extent of the entire state of North Carolina. Just for reference, there's a little over 5 million parcels. We cannot accurately display, nor would your eye be able to discern 5 million parcels on one screen at once. So it is grayed out over here. Now you'll notice as you zoom in, and I'm just going to choose Charlotte, we're going to get a bit closer, it's still grayed out. That means we need to zoom in just a little bit further. So if I zoom in just a little bit further, and we'll do it a couple more times, it will be at a scale that is appropriate to draw all these parcels. And you see how fast those drew, right? They're very optimized and very good services in most cases, especially coming from counties and things like that. But you do still have to be zoomed in. Now there is a trick. Let's say you were zoomed out to this extent, one more, and you don't see these parcels. You really needed, for some reason, to see parcels out at this layer. What I can do is I can click on this layer, and over here on the properties and styles, I can actually go ahead and show the properties. And I can choose over here on the visible range where I want these to show. Now, do be a little bit careful with this. We don't want to view all 5 million parcels. It will slow down the system. But at a scale like this, I can choose to include that little tick mark right there within my visible range. And now I see a very large set of parcels across Charlotte and the surrounding area. So again, this may or may not be useful for you. Maybe you're working on larger projects where you want to see very large parcels in association to the area, but this would be how you'd change that visible range. Now, if I change that back down, you'll see they go away, and then we'll need to zoom in again. So let's zoom in a little bit to Charlotte here. Now, let's say this is great. I want to work on downtown Charlotte, maybe even one closer here, or uptown, I guess as they call it. And we want to change the symbology. So if we go over here to the right, we can see a symbology section. And what's nice is even though we don't own this set of parcels, right, we just referenced it from the state of North Carolina, I can still edit the layer style. So I can click Edit Layer Style. I can go down here and I can say Style Options. And I have the ability to click in to edit what those parcel symbols look like. Maybe I want a red color as my outline color instead of, what was that purple color. Or maybe I want to change the fill to be a slight light color here, right? We could change that. And then we could even change that fill transparency. Now, you probably don't want a Christmas-themed map like I just made here, but you get the idea. You can change the fill, you can change the outline, you can even change the pattern of the line itself to be something like dashed. So maybe more commonly, we do something like a red outline. We'd have a no fill on the color, right? We get rid of that color over here, and we leave the red and maybe have a dashed line, or maybe keep it as a solid filled line. Now, what's great is we can save that layer in the style that we want. So over here, you have a save and open, and we can even save it to a web map that we can bring right into Business Analyst. Now, let me show you one more thing before we go ahead and go into Business Analyst. Within this mapping framework, you have full functionality to click on and explore the data. So I can click on these parcels and look at the individual data. I also have the ability to manipulate what fields are shown. I also have the ability to manipulate the different pop-ups. So if I don't want to see all this information, but just a subset, I can manipulate that in the pop-ups over here, right? So I have lots and lots of control. If you need any help doing any of this, our ArcGIS Online help is great, which talks about pop-ups and talks about fields and talks about different effects and styles, etc. But do know that you have full control over this data. Now, one thing that you may want to do before you go into the business analyst environment is generate something called centroids. And centroids are essentially the middle point of all of these different parcel polygons. So why may I want to do that? Well, I may want to use those centroids as a starting point for further analysis, right? I may want to draw drive times around them. I may want to use them for doing distances to and from different locations, etc. So how do I do that? We have some analysis tools on the far right. I can click on analysis right here, and then I get a set of tools that I can choose from. So I'm going to go into tools, and in the search, I'm going to search for the word centroid. And you're going to see find centroids right here. Now, when I have find centroids, it gives me a framework that I can choose to execute this tool. One of them is going to tell me what are my input features. In this case, it's going to be the North Carolina parcels. And then it's going to ask me what I want the resulting layer to be named. So I'm going to say this is NC parcels centroids. Now I can also choose the folder I want to save it in. So for today, if I want to save that in my separate folder, I can scroll down. I've created a CCIM demo folder. And then I also have, very importantly, environment settings. So in environment settings, you're going to see things like, what is my processing extent? So the processing extent is very important. As I talked about earlier, there's almost 5 million parcels in this set of data. I only want to be examining this downtown area. So how do I make sure that I'm only generating centroids for downtown? Well, I set the processing extent to the display extent. So by setting it to the display extent, I'm now only going to get centroids for this area. It's going to generate something around the area of 5,000 or 6,000 centroids, because there are a lot of parcels here. If I needed less, I could zoom in, or I could actually select the individual parcels that I want to generate the centroids for. For today, for speed's sake, I'm going to leave it at the display extent, and I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And we'll give it a minute. It'll start to run. It'll say view status down here, which I can choose, and it'll let me know that it's still running.
Hey, Eric,
When
while
it's
that's
done,
running, we had a quick question we think you can
Yes.
handle. Can you turn on all the industrial zoned parcels a different color, for example, to do some
Yes.
symbology?
Very good question. So while this is running, what I can do is I can go over to my styles, right? And in my single symbol style, I can actually choose to change that style. Instead of single symbol, right, I can pick a different style. So my style options in here will allow me to change the squares there, but I can also choose a field that I want to symbolize it by. So this is going to be the key, right? Is choosing a field if you want the zoning to be chosen. Now in here you'll see, a series of different fields. That was just the centroids kicking in. You see they just got mapped. But while that's finished now, I can go here, choose a field to go ahead and symbolize that by. And I'll be honest, I'm not 1,000% sure which one's a zoning field. So we're going to look at this together and see where the land use or zoning field is. You'll notice that, again, every state and county will have different nomenclature. Some will call it zoning, some will call it land use, some will call it other things that are similar. But absolutely, by going in here and checking on one of them, we can go ahead and do that. And I am looking for it. It may be in the tax parcel use code. That's very likely going to be that, or the description. Let's just try the description and add that field and see what that is. The description hopefully is going to be a little bit more. Yep, here we go. So we have a little bit more common nomenclature, right? Condo, single family, office, warehouse, commercial, et cetera, right? Now, this again is going to be up to the county or the state or whoever's publishing the data to have categorized these appropriately. So for this instance, why don't I choose something in my styles like only condo, right? So I could choose only condo and have that moved up or down in the list, or change the color for that as well. So I have lots of ability to change how this is going to be viewed. I also can filter them as well. That's something I can do to show individual styles. You'll notice right now we're doing a unique symbol based on two different values, right? We're seeing the dot in the middle, which is the centroid, and then we're also seeing the parcel outline itself. So if you wanted to go to, instead of the centroids, the parcels, I could choose that as well, choose a field, and we could choose something again like that parcel use description. We could hit add, and you notice smart symbology will very quickly show you that as well. So you can filter both the centroids and the parcels themselves. And here you go. Now you start to get a color-coded mapping of different types of land use, residential, single family, vacant, et cetera, et cetera. Again, this will be based on the county or state entity that you get it from. All right, and then let's show you some of those other values. You'll see there's also other values in here. This one's very, very full featured. Obviously, you can see there's many different types of values. This is also, again, going to be due to the fact that the layer we're using today is a North Carolina state layer. So you're going to have pretty much all of the different values coming from all the different counties. What I would recommend in this case is go ahead and go to the actual, I think it's Mecklenburg County website, to make sure you understand what's the zoning that you're looking for, and then find that zoning in here and turn that on, right? So you have full ability to turn on any of those specific zonings. Okay, all right, so that gets us to be able to map the zoning individually, change the symbology, change the scale, et cetera. Once we're happy with that, and I'm going to change that back to a location single symbol just for today. Let's go into our options. We'll go with no color and a red outline. There we go. So when we're happy with our map and we have our centroids in here, we can go ahead and save. We'll go over here to save and open, save as. Up will pop our save screen in a moment. Or should. Let's go save as. It might be taking a second because we have a lot of data in here. Hope I didn't break it, but normally you'll be able to click and save and choose that as a specific name right there for your map. So why don't we go ahead and move on to actually bring this data in. So typically, if you have any issues, just refresh and you should get that. But again, we have the layer. I think we're going to be just fine. Moving on to our next section here. So let's go back to our slides. So again, that's changing the symbolization, that's changing the scale, doing any type of symbology you want for the specific parcels, and then go ahead and choose to save that layer or map. And again, it'll make these the usability of these much easier for the next section.
Eric,
when we go to the next
when you're
section
doing
here,
the next one, can you just briefly show how they can change base maps to see either aerial or topo or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. So you can do that in both locations, right? So if we were back into Charlotte here, I'll show you this very quickly in here. And we have the parcels turned on, and I want to zoom into here, right? We have a series of different buttons on the right-hand side, but we also have buttons on the left that'll help us zoom in and zoom out. What we can do is, again, we have the properties in here to change individual layers and individual layer properties. But if we want to change the base map underneath it, that's on the left. So that's the big difference in the new map viewer. The base map is on the left. We can choose something like topographic, or we could choose something different like imagery. And I think that was likely going to be the question. We want to see the imagery. Now, when you do that, you might say, okay, I want a thicker outline or a different color to make it a bit easier to see. You certainly, again, can do that. I can edit the layer style. I can choose these style options. Maybe we'll make it a red color, and maybe I'll make my outline width a little bit thicker so that we can see these outlines a little bit easier. And there you go. Now you have a little bit clearer outlines for parcels. So I'll hit done on this. And what's nice is, again, you can save this at any extent or any location. I'll go ahead and go over to save. And there we go. Our save map popped up this time. We'll go CCIM webinar map, and we'll go ahead and save that in our CCIM demo folder. And we'll click save. So it's easy as that to save that. Again, you could have spent more time styling it. But then when we want to go ahead and go into Business Analyst, again, we're going to have a much easier time viewing the data the way we wanted to see it. So speaking of analysis, first thing I said, again, bringing into Business Analyst, we'll show you in a moment. You can load an individual layer from ArcGIS. So let's say you weren't concerned with doing that styling or changing the color width or anything like that. You don't have to. You can just bring that layer directly in from ArcGIS where you saved it. You also can, again, create a map like that and bring that map in from ArcGIS. And then finally, in some cases, you may want to actually just load a small file of parcels into Business Analyst. I recommend if you're going to be referencing layers frequently and using it repeatedly, that you save, again, either the layer or the map in ArcGIS and work off of that. But you can obviously add data in Business Analyst directly if you so choose. Now, some of the things that you might want to do with this, so generating sites in proximity, right? So one of the things you're going to want to do is jump in and actually select some of the parcels in Business Analyst to be your sites, right? And so we can either choose the site boundary itself and have either radii or drive times or things generated from those, or we can use those centroids that I talked about earlier generating and use those as the starting point for any type of proximity area generation. Also, I'm going to show you how you can do that same filtering right within Business Analyst as well. And then finally, once we have these sites, we have things filtered, we have them selected, one of the next common things to do is going to be to create reports, create infographics, compare those locations, or my favorite, generate a dashboard so that we have a series of locations that we can easily flip through information for. So all possible ways to analyze. And there's many, many other ways as well. You can use these in the variety of tools that are in Business Analyst, everything from site suitability to color-coded mapping, smart map search, et cetera. It's all possible. So let's kick back over into the software and show you some of that. So we have all of this data. We've saved the map. We've called it CCIM webinar map. I now want to jump into my Business Analyst. I've generated a new project just for demonstration purposes here. So this is clean and fresh Business Analyst project. I want to go to add data. In my add data, again, you're familiar with these different types of data sets. We can, again, import from a file, but like I suggest, using the web maps and layers is going to be your most robust and reusable way to use it across the system. Now I'm going to go down to my CCIM demo folder. That's where I've saved these, right? I, again, have these layers directly. I can bring in the parcels. I can bring in the centroid that I saved, or I can just bring in that web map that I just created. So I'll bring in that web map so that you can see how that looks. We'll give it a moment. It'll add to the map. And you notice it changed the base map because I had the base map changed on the previous web map creation screen. So now what I can do is I can zoom around a bit, or I can just zoom right in. I know I have my Charlotte area down here. That was my area of concern as we were talking about, or area of interest. And you'll notice that the data is going to respect the same scale dependencies and the same symbology from the web map. So if you were not able to see the data at a certain scale, meaning zoomed out here, the same will apply for in the map here. So just be aware of that. The same scale dependency and the same symbolization will apply across the board. So now I'm zoomed in here a little bit. I may want to do things like filter this further, right? So over here on the left, you're going to see that I can actually drop down my web maps and layers, and you're going to see that I have a few different layers on in here. Well, two of them are just base map layers, right? One is my world imagery layer. This gets turned on and off, and one of them is my reference layer for street names, city names, things like that. But the important one here is going to be the actual parcels. What's really nice is this little ellipse here at the end allows you to filter the parcels by attributes right in your Business Analyst screen. So if I click filter by attributes, right, I have a series of different parcels in here, or excuse me, a series of different attributes for the parcels in here that I can filter by. So again, if I wanted to come down here and say parcel value was greater than X dollars, or I wanted to say that the acres was less than Y acres, right? I can create any of those filters in here. I think the one that we asked for a couple times was the parcel use code description, right? So I can go ahead and hit that code description. What I can actually do is drop down and say, let's look at the, let's go ahead and do warehouse, right? That's some industrial. So I'll choose warehouse and I'll go ahead and hit done. And you'll notice that the majority of the parcels are now gone. So you're going to see that there are resulting parcels that are designated as warehouse parcels by, I believe, Mecklenburg County in this instance, and their zoning, right? So I now can see these. I can click on these parcels. These are obviously going to be zoned warehouse, and I can also click on the attributes to get more information and see that those specific pieces of information in here as well. So that's one way to quickly filter the data for what you're looking for. I now have these filtered. I also can then go on and do more analysis with them, right? So we talked earlier about selecting sites or using individual sites. So as you know, within here, I can click on any site and I can go ahead and create it as an official site within Business Analyst to do more analysis off of, or I can create a series of them, right? So I can use my select tool over here. And let's say I'm very interested in just kind of some of this downtown, or let's say west side of downtown area. I could select a series of these, right? And I've selected many, many different parcels over here. Now, I may not want this many. I may want to select more individually, right? So I could deselect and select less, or I could go over here and select an individual by individual using the shift as well, right? So again, many different ways to select multiple parcels. So here we have 6 parcels selected. I just clicked a few within the north side of downtown. I can hit create sites. Again, I can have a fill, color, border, etc. if I want to, or I can just go ahead and hit create sites. Why don't we change these borders so you can see the difference to something like a blue. We'll go ahead and create these 6 sites. Now I can choose a new layer, which is what I do want to do in this case, or I can move them to an existing layer in my map. I'm going to create a new layer out of this selection. And these are going to draw. Oh, they should have drawn. We're having a little internet issue. Let's try and save the same layer. Let's do one new one. It may not like my special characters either. Let's call them sites, polygons. Done. If not, we'll jump right into using them. Always a fun part about doing stuff live. There we go. I think it didn't like my special character, or it did not like me today. So we're going to just use one today. I'm going to select one parcel here, and we're going to select only this polygon, and we are going to create a site. Go ahead and create a site. We're going to do a new layer. Demo. And hit save. Okay, normally you can save many. For some reason, I'm getting a little bit of an issue here, but let's turn one of these on. Okay, we have our layer demo. Sorry, everybody. Normally that would work just fine. And so why don't I choose, let's just jump right into doing an infographic or report. So I can go ahead and select an infographic here. And what's nice is I had this specific parcel. Now you're going to notice it's going to have very limited data, right? Because it's an individual parcel. What I really want to do is I want to go ahead and create a radii or proximity area around here. So something like creating drive times, right? Now that is something you're going to be able to do with sites. I'm going to go ahead and save and refresh very quickly and create a site. And then we'll be able to generate it from here. Okay, let's select another parcel. And we will select only that polygon, and let's go ahead and create a site. Okay, and choose a new layer, call it site demos. We're getting a funky error. So let me just do this. I'll add a pin down on a site that I care about right here. So let's say this is the site that I care about because that parcel is right where it's at. I now should be able to create a site without a problem. Again, apologize, this took a moment. Okay, I think we're having some problems saving on the back end. So what we'll do, if we have a site here, what we're then going to be able to do is share these results, right? And so I can create many different sites out of these polygons. I then can go up to share results, and I have a different series of different ways to actually export these out. Some of them is going to be things like creating just a PDF or image of this map the way it is right here. And that's absolutely a frequent and consistent way people use parcels, is creating a quick parcel map. So maybe if this was the industrial area I was concerned with, I could hit share results, PDF or image, and I now have a map, including those parcel boundaries of that specific area. I can give it a title. If I just want to put it into a PowerPoint, let's say, I can create an image and save it as a JPEG. Or again, if I want a PDF, I can call this Charlotte Parcels Industrial. Okay. And if we want to do it as landscape, I'll create that PDF. It'll generate that PDF. And then when that's done, it'll notify me. And I now have a parcel map for this specific area. I also can label these and include data such as the acreage, such as the owner name, etc. So a lot of different ways I can then make parcel maps off this. Again, I can do analysis off this. Normally, you won't have that save problem. We'll double check on what's going on there, but you will be able to save those and analyze demographics as well. So you'll see this is ready now. I can pop this open, download it, and you'll see I have a nice Charlotte industrial parcels map showing only the ones that are industrial and not highlighting the ones that are residential or otherwise. And I believe in our selection, it was a warehouse selection. So that's a quick and easy way to make maps. Again, also able to analyze based on those centroids. So that's something that I can quickly show you. I have about 3 minutes. I will add some data again, go to my web maps and layers. I'll go to my CCIM demo, and we will bring in some of those parcel centroids. And you'll see that some of those, once added, will be here in the map. So you see I have some of these parcel centroids, so I may select that parcel right there. I may say, let's create a buffer off of this parcel. I could do 1, 3, and 5 mile, or I could do some drive times, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Maybe we'll do 5, 10, 15. We'll go ahead and apply that. And you'll notice that obviously a drive time of that size is going to go out pretty far. And we can see from that parcel what that 5, 10, and 15-minute drive time would look like. I could then make that for multiple features and compare those features, right? So I could create a site from that, hit create site, create a new layer. And hopefully we're able to save this one. And there we go. Great. That one saved that time. So now we have the ability off of that parcel to do more analytics, whether that's infographics, whether that's reports, or if I create multiple different size sites from multiple different polygons that are parcels, I can then hit my comparison button. And I think this is very important. If you haven't used this tool yet, definitely look into the comparison tool. It'll give you not only that specific site, right, 5, 10, or 15 minutes around that parcel, but it'll also compare it to the county, to the surrounding zip, to the state, to the US. And more importantly, it'll compare it to other parcels, other sites that you have created. So again, I can go through that process and create as many as I want of those sites and then bring them into this comparison report and compare them based on different sets of demographics. It could just be something like a standard population comparison. It could be something like an income comparison, etc. I also can change these variables. So if I wanted to do a different variable, I can click on that ellipse and replace that variable for a different variable in here. Let's say I wanted something like, let's go spending, and maybe it was spending on, let's go entertainment, and we'll choose something like health clubs. Let's say we were looking for a health club parcel, membership for social, recreational, or health clubs. And I can go ahead and apply that. And now I have that as well, that spending to compare. So great way to go ahead and compare parcels very quickly. I can always go back to my map and select more parcels, like I said, compare them side to side. And then I implore you to definitely look at dashboards. So as you get a series of sites, a series of parcel locations that you're interested in, you can bring them into dashboards. and you can have them as a shareable and comparable set of locations right within the dashboard, including that parcel location itself. All right, so we've gone through a series of how to use not only the parcel data sources, but the mapping, the symbology, the scale, and then bringing them into the business analyst application to do things like generating proximity or areas around them, and then comparing them and running different demographics and infographics. So hopefully this gives you a process to start using your parcels and some ideas about how you can augment what you're currently doing today with new data sources and new mapping techniques. So appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Gary for any questions or other information.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for sharing. And we do have a few questions that came in. One of the questions, can you get parcel owner mailing lists? And can you search by those mailing lists if you want to see other properties in a market that that person might own?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So most of these parcel data sets do have owner mailing address in them. In many cases, that owner is not necessarily a single entity. It might be a corporation, et cetera. But those are in the data sets in most cases. Again, it's going to be county by county. Now, if you go with an aggregated third party, right, they're going to clean up a lot of that data. And so you're going to have a single field that has all of that owner information. So if you're looking for mass amounts of owner information, I do recommend looking at some of the third party. But if you're interested in just individual parcel data information for ownership address, you definitely, if I click back over here, you definitely can see a lot of that in the map. I'll go ahead and click in here and just show you a quick example. And you'll see there's a mailing address right here for the owner for that specific
And you can
location.
You can create a list based on those attributes.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can create that table by selecting a series of parcels and exporting that table out so that you have a series of addresses.
How often is that data updated, Eric?
Yeah, good question. So again, these are controlled county by county in almost all cases. Most counties at minimum will have a yearly update, and that's very infrequent anymore. Most counties are doing it monthly. Many are doing it even daily and weekly now. If you're very, again, concerned with the update frequency of all the sets of data, the third-party partners do tend to have resources to update those data sources very frequently. Regrid, for example, I know has a partner that does daily updates if you pay for that service for all in which that's available across the country.
Another good question about proposed real estate development. Is there a way to find those as well?
Yeah, very good question. So there is the idea of change detection in these parcels. And again, some of the third parties already have that created. You could do that yourself in terms of looking at the differentiation in zoning when those parcels update, right? That is one precursor or idea to look at where growth may come. There are also other data sets that you can layer on top of parcels to understand that. One of the preferred partners that we have is called BCI, that's Build Central. And so what they have is they have all permits across the country at a very high coverage, 90 some percent, for all projects that are $500,000 or up that are permitted, but not yet built across the country.
And just to clarify, those data sets are outside of the CCIM subscription?
They are. Those are third-party data sets like BCI or third-party parcel. Now, again, we also, just to be clear, what is included with your subscription is the estimated population growth over 5 years and other estimated growth variables. So that will give you a little bit broader of a block group, market, track level growth indicator if you want to get down to specifically what may appear on a parcel. Third-party data may be the way to go there.
What about Canadian data, Eric? What data sets are available?
Yeah, so very good question. So we at Esri, we've done some projects with some of our largest customers, and we now have certain projects that have over 50 countries worth of parcel data. RexTag is one of the premier international data parcel providers. I do not know offhand how much of Canada may be publicly available. That's something you'll want to search based on the resources I gave you. So looking at RTS Online and searching for publicly available parcels. But if you know you want to just quick and easily buy some parcels and bring them in for another country, RexTag would be a great partner to look at.
Awesome. Let's see if we got. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. Anything else that comes in or we didn't get to, we'll answer. We'll put answers when we send out the presentations. But I think, Eric, thank you for sharing with us today. Once again, a reminder that the presentation and also a recording of this will be available to everybody who's on the call and who registered. And also we have I think there's a newsletter that you can sign up for as well if you want to get additional information from CCIM. And I think at this point, I thank everybody for your time and attention today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.